dilated. Yeah. Worldwide.
What is going on, people? We are back for the 134th edition of the MMA Podcast. It is late at night, August 22nd or August 23rd, depending on where you're listening to us. As always, we got a bunch to break down. We haven't done a podcast in a hot minute, about a week and a half, so we have UFC OSP Glover we're going to touch on real quick. We got a gang of fight announcements to break down, a welterweight title fight, a lightweight title fight, 2 women's title fights to break down, along with a few more fight announcements. And of course, today, in about, 12 hours, UFC Saskatoon, Holloway, Oliveira to break down. Let's do it, people. Goddamn!
You're listening to the MMA Podcast.
That's right, Lenny Hart. It is the MMA Podcast. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for listening. My friend, colleague at Sweet Pappy Jones, he's known as P Money. Thank you for joining me tonight. How are you doing, buddy?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me here, Jake. It's a beautiful Saturday evening here in SoCal. Hopefully the Sunday mornings treat you beautiful over there in Florida. Just gearing up for a big Sunday full of action. Going to be a sweet little Canadian card here. And that Tennessee card had some pretty sweet action itself. So definitely excited to get back after a little 2-week hiatus and do the damn thing with you, brother.
Yes, Saskatoon. They've got a card tonight. I'm assuming this is the UFC's first card they've put on in Saskatoon, mainly because I've never fucking heard of Saskatoon in my entire life. They probably have a minor league hockey team or something. They're in Saskatchewan. We got some fights to break down toward the end of the show, including Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira, which should be a very, very fun fight. Really quick, before we bite into the meat of the show, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at the MMA Podcast. Like I mentioned, visit Sweet Pappy Jones for our co-host Twitter. Also, quick shout out to our boy Ramses at the Aunt Jimmy Show. He's doing well, and we hope to have him back soon, going through a little transition period over there. And, of course, visit Twitter at FilthyFRB Show. That is a show I actually produce, and they've been putting out quality content. The most recent episode, gym owner Matt Santos, a really interesting perspective from him. He also was a extra on the infamous Kimbo fight where he took on I'm blanking on homie's name. It was Kimbo against the guy who fucking finished him, Sean Gannon. Yeah, Sean Gannon, not MMA, but match? Yeah. The street fight, Sean Gannon, and that actually was at Matt Santos's gym, and you actually heard the FRB intro there because I had to pull it up. Yeah, Sean Gannon, Matt Santos was cornering Gannon there, and if you've got to listen to one episode of the FRB show, it's Larry Pepe. That dude breaks it down better than anyone I've ever heard. Pro MMA Radio is his show. He came on the show, I guess it was last Monday, to talk about the Anderson Silva, just the clusterfuck of a hearing, which we'll touch on later. We won't get nearly as deep into it as Larry did with Brian and Tom. That was an amazing show. Larry Pepe. If I had to choose one MMA journalist who just knows the sport front to back, it's probably him. It's not Jeremy Botter. It's not Ariel. It's not any of these other guys. As much as those guys are good, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them, Larry Pepe is the guy. If I have to choose one journalist, the guy just knows the sport front to back. And his most recent appearance on the FRB show is fucking amazing. It's his second one. If you haven't heard the first, which is a few months old, go back and listen to that too. The FRB show available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. I think SoundCloud only has the most recent 1 or 2 episodes, but all the episodes are up on the YouTube because they don't have bandwidth limits, and you can find the pages for all 3 sites on frbshow.com. Not to push their show over ours, but just an awesome show, awesome appearances, and Chael Sonnen actually going to be making an appearance on the FRB show this coming Monday, so you definitely want to check that out, whether you're on the East Coast like me, the West Coast like P Money, whether you're on Mars listening to this shit like our boy Super Kahlo, who of course is on Twitter at Super Kahlo. We've got to shout Kahlo out every now and then. But yeah, we are live. We're on Ustream at ustream.com, or sorry, ustream.tv/channel/the MMA Podcast. And if you want to join the conversation, you can tweet us at the MMA Podcast, or call us. That's on Skype at the MMA Podcast, or 213-457-3380. And any tweets we get during the show, I try and read. I've got the Twitter feed up. Of course, if you call, I will try and accept it, unless I'm doing a crazy rant and just have gone completely red and can't see the screens anymore. That does it for the intro rant. Let's get into the fight card that we haven't broken down yet, which I do apologize. Had a little bit of a technical difficulty. Spent a week in Tampa Bay visiting family, and I brought the mic so I could do a podcast, but my stupid ass didn't bring the cord. And I went to Walmart looking for the specific cord, couldn't find it. And you know what? Straight up, your boy just dropped the ball. Shout out to our buddy Gavin Frost at Gavin Frost 361, saying "Bout time, cocksucker," because it has been a while since our last show. And of course, ironically, our last show was like, okay, I've done the move to Florida, and we're gonna do regular shows from here on out. And then I don't do a show for 2 weeks. It's
no more
sad.
3-hour marathon shows.
Exactly. No.
Marathon show.
Don't say no more 3-hour marathon shows, or else it's going to be a 3-hour show. Basically, if I say something, anything, you want to take it with a grain of salt, because I tend to be horrible at keeping promises. But, yeah, OSP...
It's that broadcaster's jinx, son.
Yeah, for real, man. But OSP St. Preux, I do want to talk about that card. An interesting card, a lot of snoozers on it, but a lot of points I do want to talk about. Dustin Ortiz defeating Willie Gates via 3rd round TKO. I'm not even going to talk about the Fight Pass card, because I don't know, the fighters on it don't really aren't even in the top 25. Frankie Saenz with a split decision victory. Chris Camozzi defeating Tom Watson. That was the biggest fight I had my eye on the prelims. And Uriah Hall defeating Olawale Bambagosi via 1st round TKO. Hall now getting a matchup with Gegard Mousasi, which maybe the biggest step up in opponents, going from this guy Wale, who very good, he has KO power, and now he's got to fight one of I don't know. I sort of hesitate to call Gegard an all-time great, but he really is. His record, especially overseas, the guy's amazing. And Uriah Hall is, Jay Jeans, a friend of both of ours. Me, and Jay took a road trip out to the Grand Canyon with Jay, and I think one of my favorite fighter descriptions of all time belongs to Jay when he said Uriah Hall is like a video game character that's maxed out to 99 in every single category, but the guy playing the game has never played the game before. And it's such an apt comparison because the guy has all the tools, the athleticism. I mean, the way he throws kicks fundamentally is near perfect. The guy seems to have it all, but his strategy and his mental game at times just seems to be completely absent. So Hall, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does against a a seasoned veteran like Mousasi. I'll include the main card in this up to the co-main and main event. Ray Borg, a huge favorite, getting the easy 30-27. Amanda Nunes, Sarah McMahon. This was probably the most talked about fight, not including the main and co-main event, because Nunes, being the underdog, came and finished Sarah in the first round. But a podcast I listen to is the MMA Oddscast with Luca Fury, and he made a really good point, which is Sarah McMahon has the tools, has the skills, is a good fighter, but it doesn't take much to mentally take her out of the fight. And the fight she lost in the third round, I think against Miesha Tate, she was winning the first and second round, and she got rocked, and then Miesha just owned the third round, ended up taking a majority decision. Nunes just, rocked her, got the advantageous spot in the first round and finished her quick. Jared Rochold wins a unanimous decision. We all expected him to win, and Derek Brunson ends up getting the quick finish against Sam Alvey, who, I don't know, I sort of predicted this fight, I think, on the last episode, saying that Alvey would need to weather the storm, and if he were to win, it would probably need to be by winning the second and third round or by getting a late finish. Brunson just went out there. It's difficult being in the spot of Sam there, where Brunson has better wrestling, so he's going to be dictating where the fight takes place, and the striking is much better for Brunson too, and he executed the game plan very well, finished him on the feet 2 minutes and 19 seconds in. And we'll save the main and co-main event for later. But Pat, what did you think about this card that I hate to be breaking down because it feels like it went down a millennia ago, August 8th in Nashville, but we haven't done a podcast since, so I do want to touch on it. What fight stood out for you?
Well, I thought it was a pretty decent night of fights over there in Nashville. And it's just so funny that you say it feels like it was so long ago. And it really does. But it's so funny when you look back at how it used to be 5-10 years ago when events would be maybe 8 times a year. Then they grew to 30 times a year. Now it's, oh man, if it's not once a week.
And now it's weird when there's not a fight card on any given weekend. I mean,
exactly.
It's like 2 weeks between cards, and it feels like forever. We're literally going from 8 to 12 cards a year to fucking 40, 50 cards a year. It's insane. Which, it's good and bad. I've ranted a ton about how I hate how it's sort of made the pay-per-view cards, the main cards, much weaker. But I mean, shit. I really enjoy their main cards almost every weekend.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, we could talk about fight saturation or whatever, but no. Anyways, this was a real good card, though. I thought, there was some of the ones that I liked. I enjoyed watching Dustin Ortiz take on Willie Gates. Willie Gates, he stepped in on short notice. That was a big jump up in competition for him against Dustin Ortiz. He really did the UFC a favor taking that fight, and Dustin Ortiz just used that wrestling and pretty much dominated that fight the whole time, and he ended up getting that nice TKO at the end of the fight, and it was just a good performance from Ortiz. He's really come a long way. I mean, I remember interviewing him. I believe me and Rabbi, shout out to Rabbi, we had interviewed him, and back in his Tachi Palace fight days, and he was just coming up in the game, and now he's looking real good in the UFC. He's really putting everything together. And it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here, because with the UFC division the way it is, I mean, who knows? He could be next to take on the winner of Johnson versus Dodson too. So I like seeing him come through in that one. I liked John Wilson. He had a sweet little knockout of Chris Dempsey. I wasn't really too familiar with both guys, but anytime you get a knockout in less than a minute, I'm always gonna be enjoying that. I mean, it was a pretty good card over there. Kamosi versus Watson. I thought that was some pretty good action there. A solid prelims and main card.
Yeah, and that brings us to the co-main event. Man, I have heard a lot of varying things about Beneil Dariush against Michael Johnson, pardon me. Everyone I know picked Michael Johnson, pretty much except for the two judges of three that picked Dariush winning this fight. I thought Johnson very clearly won the first round. I thought Dariush won the third round. Not as clearly as Johnson won the first round, but I did give the third round to Dariush. In the second round was close, but I gave it to Johnson. And you go on MMA decisions, and almost every member of the media scores it a 29-28 Johnson. But that's not how it worked out. Dariush ends up winning a split decision. Ooh, pardon me there. Only one of the judges giving Johnson a 29-28, the other two giving it to Dariush. Before we get into it, what did you think of the decision?
I thought it was Michael Johnson's fight. Pretty much everybody, like you did. I had Johnson clearly winning the first. Dariush had the third and second one competitive, but going to Johnson. Having said that, I definitely think he should have gotten the decision in this one, but having semi-predicted a Dariush upset in our previous episode, I'm not too bummed that he got the decision. Well, actually, I am. I mean, it always sucks when a fighter doesn't get the rightful victory that they should. For picks and percentage and wagering, though, it's always nice getting those underdogs right, especially at Dariush's size. I believe he was like plus 195 maybe or something like that. But no, that definitely should have gone Michael Johnson's way. But I mean, heck, I think it's a testament to Dariush just that he was able to even hang in there. I mean, this is the guy that was knocked out by Ramsey Nijem. He had a 4-5 win streak coming into this fight, and hey, he was able to win that third round. He definitely did. So I think he's making strides in his game, and Michael Johnson, I think he did what he needed to do. You should be able to count on the judges to get the scores right, I feel. but I mean, you shouldn't have to force yourself to take an overly aggressive game plan because there's incompetent officials overseeing a fight. Um, but man, he could have pressed it a little bit more and try to get the finish, but um, it was a decent co-main event that was marred by a terrible decision.
Yeah, and of course, resident fuckhead Douglas Crosby was one of the judges who scored it to Darush. Um, I I have no idea how Douglas Crosby is still a judge. Honestly, this is the same guy who scored Penn Edgar 1 50-45 to Edgar. And not only that, but then he goes home and makes a blog post about how much he hates Penn fans. Like, oh, judges shouldn't have bias, but you're going to go online and talk about how much you hate fans of the fighter you just fucked over. Like, really? Sal D'Amato, a guy who I've criticized a lot of his scores before, he was the only one who got it right. He was the only judge who scored it 29-28 to Johnson. The other two judges, Richard Bertrand, who, I don't know, he's just a human. Everyone can fuck something up every now and again. And like I said, resident piece of shit Douglas Crosby. They both scored at 29-28 Darush. I'm here on MMADecisions.com. 12 media members. They all score it to Johnson. Two of them actually have it 30-27 Johnson, which in my eyes, if there is any round that could have gone either way, it's maybe the third round. I don't know. Our boy Tom Lawler went on the FRB show. I forget if it was the Santos or the Pepe episode, and said, yeah, maybe it wasn't that bad a decision because round 2 was close and 1 went to one guy and 3 went to the other. But I think it was pretty terrible. Luckily, I think the UFC has those mechanisms in place to when you get a terrible decision, the guy who's on the shitty end of it will get a good fight next. It isn't like Johnson is going to be punished too much for his technical loss in Nashville. Let's move to the main event: Glover versus OSP. Man, I said this would be a battle of the gas tanks, and I feel like partially I was right, but partially, to me at least, the story was Glover being able to take Ovens down whenever he wanted. The first round, the second round, the third round, he ends up choking OSP to sleep. What did you think of the main event, P-Money?
Well, I think we're both eating crow today on this podcast, Jake, because I know last show we were both predicting this one going OSP's way. And, I mean, for a moment, it looked like OSP could have had it. He had the nice liver kick in the beginning of the first round, and he tried to capitalize on it. Looked like he was about to pull out that victory in front of the hometown crowd for a moment there. But, yeah, Glover talking about the endurance. He showcased it for sure. And I don't know if it was a lower center of gravity, perhaps, or what it might have been. I mean, hey, usually that's a key in wrestling, but yeah, Glover was really able to apply his game against a guy who I thought really was looking super sharp. I mean, OSP, he had beaten some guys, no slouches, and he had looked like he had some good grappling chops, and did not expect Glover Teixeira to come in and out wrestle him. That's not usually the way you see things going with the Brazilian wrestler taking on the Tennessee Volunteer with the collegiate background there in athletics. It was a great performance from Glover. I was definitely, he got the technical submission win there, choked OSP out. OSP wouldn't tap in front of his hometown. It was a great showing overall. We're eating crow today, but good upset for sure.
And one thing I got to give to OSP, As much as I hate the University of Tennessee being a UF alum, walking out to Rocky Top was pretty cool. Yeah, just OSP, man. I don't know. The guy's got a gang of athleticism, but I just don't know how he's going to do in the light heavyweight division. At least now, luckily the guy's still pretty green. The guy's making strides. I mean, just it seems like a year or two ago, he was a newcomer in Strikeforce, and now I'm looking at the rankings. Even after the loss, he's 6th in the rankings at 205, which is which is very legit. The guy's 32, but he's not like a Shogun 32 where he's got 50 fights under his belt. He only has 25. He only has he only has 7 losses, and I don't know if he has any KO losses. He has a TKO loss way back in his career before he joined Strikeforce. Actually, wow. Started his career 3-4 with a losing record. Since then, he's 15-3 losses, obviously against Moussaoui via decision in Strikeforce, Bader via decision about a year ago, and this loss to Glover. The guy hasn't taken many KOs, much damage. And the more training he gets, I feel like he's got a lot of room to grow. But it's just that the athleticism is there. Just he's got to get a little bit better on the ground. Maybe the striking, the power's there, but maybe develop a little more technique. And I don't know, man. This guy could, if he develops a little more, which he's apparently training at Knoxville Martial Arts Academy. No knock to them, but if you get him under a top, yeah, exactly. If you get him training with a top camp, he might be able to blossom and develop into a champion. Shit. Glover. Let's talk about him. He was training with what? Oh man, I'm blanking on the gym. He's with ATT, right?
Well, he was always with Chuck Liddell and the Pit. I want to say it was. Whether he's with ATT right now, I couldn't really say.
What I heard is he trained with ATT in South Florida a bunch, and then sort of moved up to Connecticut and started his own branch of ATT and started focusing more on being a coach and training people and running his own gym rather than being a student and getting better as a fighter. He had that loss against Jones, which, let's face it, everyone loses to fucking John Jones, who, in my opinion, is the second best, greatest fighter of all time behind GSP, will probably retire as the GOAT. As much as I hate that guy, the loss to Davis I didn't expect. This win against OSP, I'm very curious. We talk about rankings. Currently, we have DC as the champ, Johnson 1, Gus 2, and Glover 3. I wonder who Glover gets next. If it's Johnson, if it's Bader, Rashad Evans. Rashad is fighting who next? I know he's scheduled to fight. Is he scheduled to fight Bader next?
Yeah, that is the fight they're making, actually. And then Anthony Johnson, he's got Jimmy Manuwa coming up.
Yeah, I mean, the winner of one of those two fights, I think, will get Glover next. Because Glover, he took 2 losses in a row, but a win against OSP is big. He already has a first-round TKO win against Bader. Interested to see who Glover gets next. Who do you think he'll end up fighting?
Well, you know how the UFC works these days, Jake. I mean,
Yeah.
a win isn't even necessary, let alone any kind of streak, to get you into UFC title contention, especially when you got a brand new champion. So he could easily get the winner of DC versus Gustafson. He'd easily get the winner of Jimmy Manua, the Jimmy Manua fight. Um, as far, I mean, as far as I can tell,
I would say the winner of Evans Bader gets a title shot, and the winner of Manoa Johnson faces Glover for a title shot.
I mean, the all viable options. I definitely think that makes sense, and that'd probably be how it works out.
Yeah, we will see. And we'll see how this Rumble Johnson story about. Did you see the whole Facebook post thing? He said he tossed some chick, which I think the UFC overreacted a little bit. Rumble made a Facebook post about, oh, there was some chick doing yoga in the weightlifting section, and I cussed her ugly ass, fat ass out, and threw her yoga mat across the gym. It was a bad move posting that on social media, especially considering that you've been accused of domestic violence in the past. Come on, bro. And the UFC, I think, overreacted a little bit, saying, we've hired a team of lawyers to investigate this, making a bigger deal out of it than should have been. Did you read anything about this whole thing?
Yeah, I had read the gist of it. I didn't actually look at Anthony Johnson's original Facebook post or anything. Just the little quotes from the post that were in some of the articles I had read. So, just not a good look for Johnson. I mean, how many fighters have to get into this issue? I mean, Miguel Torres was kicked out of the UFC, eventually brought back, but he was kicked out of the UFC and had to seek employment elsewhere for just saying egregious shit on social media. I mean, the UFC, we've kind of touched on this issue a little bit before, because the UFC is one company that, at least at one point, pushed very, very heavily the involvement of fighters in social media. And so it's like, well, how are you going to push them to get involved in social media and then reprimand them for things they do and say, hey, these are guys that are trying to develop their personality? Where do you draw the line? This is a First Amendment issue. So this is a real slippery slope, but definitely a bad look for Johnson and a bad look for the UFC. As you mentioned, he does have those incidents in his past, and I mean, really, it's just unbecoming behavior of a professional athlete and really any kind of human being.
Yeah, and I think that wraps up the OSP Glover shit, so let's move on. Let's get to the news. And I've been leading off just about everything. Pat, I'll let you lead off this one. I can't wait for this fight. Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit, November 14th, UFC 193 in Melbourne. Holy shit, what do you think about this?
Oh, goddamn.
Break it down for us. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, this is going to be a sick, nasty matchup. Carlos Condit, it's going to be great to see him in there for the title. He did win the interim championship before, of course, in the infamous Nick Diaz fight. And it's going to be great to see him back in the ring with Robbie Lawler. These two guys, former Strikeforce vet and Robbie Lawler, former WEC veteran and champion in Carlos Condit. And Condit wants that gold. He wants that legit gold. And these guys, this fight's just made for fireworks. Condit, he's got the good jiu-jitsu guy. He's not necessarily your wrestler type, really, but he's got a slick ground game, very flexible. He'll put you in some bad positions on the ground. And he's got a very aggressive striking style. I'm sure we all remember his knockouts over Dan Hardy. His brutal flying knee and follow-up uppercut assault that broke Stun Gun's jaw and just completely destroyed his life. Thank God Stun Gun is still with us today and still able to fight. It's going to be so awesome. And ruthless Robbie Lawler, of course, we've all seen what he's done in his past few fights. He just is a man on fire as of late. Just a true beast. And, I mean, if it weren't for all these new drug test policies, I mean, I'd say somebody test this guy because he just looks like the craziest beast. I mean, for 170 pounds, that dude is freaking diesel. And he has just rounded that game and refined his game to such a point. He's really putting things together. I'm quite excited for this matchup. It should be interesting to see how it goes. And I mean, I feel Carlos Condit, he has had some issues. We saw Tyron Woodley. He hurt him real bad. Woodley was dominating that fight even before the Condit injury. He was blasting Condit, something fierce. And ruthless Robbie Lawler, he's a taller, lengthier guy, and probably a bigger guy overall, I'd say, just with a very similar style. So, plus with the added wrestling, we saw what Johnny Hendricks was able to do to Condit, just basically out-wrestle him to death. So it's going to be a tough one for Condit, but it's just going to be a fantastic fight for sure. No way this one's a snoozer.
Exactly, and you know, I do think Lawler will be the favorite, and Condit might not be overall the best fighter in the division, but as far as fighters who give Lawler issues, I think Condit gives Lawler a lot more issues than a lot of guys, even guys who are ranked ahead of him and should be ranked ahead of him, because Condit just comes at you with this toolkit, which I talk about toolboxes and fighters and what they're able to do with them. Carlos Condit has, you know, yeah, his hammer may not be the strongest hammer in MMA, and his screwdriver might not be the strongest screwdriver in MMA. And if you look at individual skills, he might not be the best blank at anything in mixed martial arts, but as far as who has the most diverse set of skills, who has the biggest toolbox, who has the most tools to work with, it's maybe Condit, because that guy can just, I mean, whether it's submissions, whether it's striking, I mean, you look at his recent fight against Thiago Alves, where he fucking pushed Thiago's nose into his brain. Carlos Condit is dangerous no matter where he is. And I think he's going to offer up a lot of problems for Robbie Lawler. I'll call the upset special right now. I think Condit is the next welterweight champion. Lawler is very good, and I'm not taking anything away from Robbie Lawler, who put forth literally my favorite fight of all time at UFC 189 against Rory McDonald, where in the 5th round he had to finish very, you know, I mean, this is akin to Anderson Silva in the first fight against Chael Sonnen. He had to finish the fight in the 5th round or he was going to lose. And Robbie Lawler punched Rory McDonald's nose to the point where Rory had to tap for his long-term health's sake. And anyone calling Rory a pussy for that tap and for giving up is insane, because Rory, I mean, his nose was so busted up that you were looking at career-ending damage if he decided to stay in that. Robbie Lawler is one of my favorite fighters of all time, but Carlos Condit, just the toolbox he's dealing with. I mean, the guy's got 38 wins and 30 wins, 28 of those by finish, 15 knockouts, 2 submissions, probably came closer to defeating George St. Pierre than anyone on earth not named Johnny Hendricks, Matt Serra, or Matt Hughes. The guy is just dealing fucking fire, and this is, man, I mean, even more than Aldo McGregor, which we will see in 2015. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that fight. But for me, this is my most anticipated fight of 2015. Not because they're both so good, but just because stylistically, I mean, holy shit, you have Condit, who's a natural-born killer. He's just going to come out there with no emotion and be throwing knees and kicks and crazy shit. And Robbie Lawler, who, man, I don't think, even as a 70-year-old man, I don't think I'll ever be able to forget the end of the second fight of Lawler-Hendricks, where Lawler finishes the fight with that flurry, and the fight ends, and Dean breaks him up, and Lawler's just still staring at Hendricks with that killer look on his face, like, fuck, I like both guys so much. I hate there has to be a loser in this fight, but man, this is gonna be a barn burner, fam.
Yeah, that's just gonna be a sick fight. I'm definitely amped up for this one as well. I mean, it's just been a stacked up year of events, and
Yeah, it has.
this one, I mean, it's gonna be sweet.
It will. The co-main event of the same card, we're finally seeing it. It was the fight of the year when it happened. Unfortunately, Antonio Silva, a.k.a. Bigfoot, was popped with the hot magma. But we're finally seeing a rematch, Hunt versus Bigfoot 2 at the co-main. I don't know, maybe it's the pessimist in me. I doubt we see the roller coaster of a fight we saw the first time around. I think without the TRT, Bigfoot isn't able to absorb half the damage he did the first time around. I see Hunt winning KO in the co-main event at UFC 193 in front of his Aussie fans over there in Melbourne on November 14th. I have Hunt via KO. Hunt Bigfoot 2. What do you see going down in this one?
Well, this is going to be a real interesting fight, and this is one of those ones where, especially in the wave of all the drug test reforms and things we've been seeing in the UFC, I'm very interested to see how a lot of fights are going to play out, especially a lot of rematches like this. I don't know how this fight went to a 5-round decision the first time I watched it. I mean, I was flabbergasted watching Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot Silva 1. That was just such an epic monstrosity of a heavyweight battle. I mean, I don't know how Mark Hunt was able to survive with Bigfoot Silva sitting on his chest, pounding him in the face. Just that Samoan chin holding up. But it seems like they've both gone downhill very quickly, even just since that fight. Silva, we've seen him get knocked out a couple times. Hunt, I want to say we've seen him get knocked out at least once, maybe twice since then. And it's going to be a much quicker affair, I definitely say. However it goes, I could see really either of them getting the knockout. I mean, of course, Mark Hunt definitely has the advantage standing, albeit Bigfoot having his stand-up. But I sincerely do not think Bigfoot would be able to knock out Mark Hunt with his stand-up game. But if he's able to get that lumbering gigantism having ass on top of Mark Hunt and, do what he did to Fedor and do what he did to Mark Hunt for a good majority, or, well, not a good majority, but a good portion of their first fight, and just rain down those punches from guard, he's certainly got a chance. But for me, I think I'd have to go with Mark Hunt in this one. I'm riding with you on that, Jake. I think Hunt's going to come out and he's just going to give us a Shoryuken dragon punch, uppercut of a knockout. Yeah, it's it's definitely going to be a good one, but I do think, like you mentioned, a little more perhaps anticlimactic. I mean, after their first fight, anything's anticlimactic after that
Yeah,
first fight. That's the only fight
seriously.
I was ever happy to see scored a draw.
I think I'm in the same boat. You didn't want either guy to lose after that fucking barn burner. We'll move down the list. December 11th, the Tough 22 finale, the main event. Likely a lightweight title eliminator between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson. Man, there are not many people at lightweight who I see Tony Ferguson losing to. Ferguson, maybe currently the most underrated active fighter in the UFC. I mean, the guy, you don't hear anything about him, but he's probably top 5 in what is the UFC's first or second deepest weight class. I mean, lightweight, featherweight, and welterweight, I think, are the 3 most difficult weight classes in the UFC. And you have Tony Ferguson, who, unless you're a big MMA fan, nobody knows anything about. Tony, this is an excellent chance for him. I think there's only a handful of guys who would beat Tony. Unfortunately for him, I think Nurmagomedov is one of them. I think Khabib is the future champion. Whether RDA or Cerrone ends up winning that title fight in Orlando, which is our next fight to break down after this. He's coming off a knee injury, and the guy is just a straight killer. Yeah, he might not have that flashy Tony Pettis type stand-up, but Khabib can just go in there and get inside with anybody and absolutely smother them to death. Nurmagomedov, like I said, I think he's a future champion, and I think he's able to get past Ferguson and win himself a title shot here at the Tough 22 finale.
Yeah, this is just going to be a sick fight. It's really a great matchup with the kind of momentum Ferguson's been able to build. I mean, he's not the same fighter he was when Nurmagomedov was putting his win streak together in the UFC.
No, not at all.
Not at all. You would have, if this match were announced 2 years ago, nobody in the world would pick Tony Ferguson in that matchup. I mean, no disrespect, but just what Nurmagomedov was doing and what Tony Ferguson is doing.
If you asked me a year ago, I would say, I would make all the fucking jokes. Oh, the Ferguson family has picked out a plot at the local cemetery. This is sad. Ferguson doesn't stand a chance. As far as fighters who have impressed me and really made a positive impression on my opinion of them in the last year and a half, Ferguson might be at the top of that list. His striking way better than I thought, but more importantly, that motherfucker's ground game. He is a master. I mean, the guy can tie up anyone seemingly.
Yeah, he's just got the whole package going. I mean, slick striking, great ground game, great movement. Really seems to have put everything together. He's 9-1 in the UFC. However, this isn't going to be the main event. This is not the headliner for Tough 22. This is going to be a 3-round main card bout, but not the main event. So I'm quite curious to see who's going to be the main event over this one. At least according to the last reports I had read. But yeah, this is just a sick fight, and the whole new dynamic now with Tony Ferguson being where he is with Nurmagomedov, and you know what? Combined with the layoff that Nurmagomedov has had with his knee injury, I think that Tony Ferguson very well could have what it takes to stop Khabib. I mean, I've been wrong many times because Khabib Nurmagomedov, when he fought Gleison Tibau, I thought Gleison Tibau won that fight, and I would defy anybody to go back and watch that fight because I thought Tibau very clearly outstruck him and actually basically outgrappled him in that fight. Only person I've ever seen be able to hold their own with Khabib was in that fight with Gleison Tibau. However, Khabib got that fight. But anyways, I think that's just proof in itself. Even though Gleison did not get the victory, he definitely showed that it is possible to stifle what Khabib can do. So I definitely feel like I think Tony's going to come in with that thunder as well, and I think he's going to come in. He's going to steal that momentum and beat Khabib Nurmagomedov, move to 10-1 in the UFC, and probably be the next person to take on the RDA versus Cowboy winner.
Yeah, and I agree there. You bring up an interesting point, which I noticed as well. The UFC did not, you would figure when they make this fight, Khabib versus Ferguson, then they're going to call it, the TUF 22 finale, Nurmagomedov versus Ferguson, but they didn't. They didn't make it the main event, which just adds another wrench in the weirdness of that weekend. Because that, this is the day before UFC 194, a big event the UFC is doing, Aldo versus McGregor, which there's just so much weirdness. You've got this tough season, McGregor versus Faber, and one day after the finale, McGregor is fighting a different guy, Aldo. And you've got to think that if they're not going to announce this being the main event has to be Uriah Faber versus someone. Who is that someone? Is it going to be Dominic Cruz? Probably not. I think they're aiming to make a Cruz versus Dillashaw fight before Cruz hurts himself again walking out of a 7-Eleven, slipping on a banana peel, breaking his back. My guess is that they want Uriah Faber versus Rafael Assunção to headline this tough finale, and they haven't gotten Assunção on board yet. It just adds, man, this is such a weird weekend, how you're going to have Conor be doing a whole season of The Ultimate Fighter against Uriah Faber, and it's like, how are you going to balance the Conor versus McGregor matchup, the Conor versus Faber matchup, when literally one day after the finale he's facing Aldo? They've already done a world tour of Conor and Aldo. It just, I feel like the intention to put Conor as a tough coach was to add more publicity to the title fight with Aldo. But this might just backfire in their face because you're going to be running all these ads, Conor, Uriah, Conor, Uriah, Conor, Uriah. And then one day, 24 hours after the tough finale, Conor's fighting Aldo, who has nothing to do with tough that whole season. It's going to, obviously, if you're Dana White, if you're Lorenzo, you want Conor to win this fight. And this whole season of tough is going to do nothing but take his eyes off the prize, take up a lot of his time where he could be training the night before the fight. Instead of being at home preparing himself for these fights, he's probably going to be out in Las Vegas, cheering on his team at the TUF 22 finale, his fighters. Do you think this is just... I don't know. I hate to call out Zuffa, mainly because it means I'll probably never ever get a press pass. But this whole weekend and this whole event and this whole issue with Conor, it just seems so mismanaged.
No, it certainly does. I feel it seems quite idiotic as well. I've always been against putting current UFC champions, although McGregor's just an interim champion, if you want to be technical.
Still, if you're the interim champion, unless the undisputed champion is on the rack for another, 4 or 5 months, which of course he's not, because he's going to be fighting the motherfucker the day after. If you're an interim champion, your next fight is only against one guy, the undisputed champion. And if you're an undisputed champion, your next fight is only for the belt. And this whole thing, yeah, Conor and Uriah, they pushed each other in a hallway before the fight. Like, this is one of the most, if not the most, mismanaged scenarios in UFC history that I can think of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does nothing but confuse the general public, really. I mean, we saw the media tour that they did for the first time they scheduled Aldo versus McGregor. I can only imagine they would probably try to replicate it, especially with the success that they did end up having with that event when it ended up turning into McGregor versus Mendez, as well as that sick-ass Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler co-headliner. But yeah, it just makes no sense. How do you run these two completely separate promotional campaigns? I mean, it really doesn't do justice to either product, I don't feel. And again, I don't like putting champions or really active fighters whatsoever in coaching positions on the Ultimate Fighter. It doesn't make sense. Leave that for coaches. If you want fighters as coaches, put some of the old vets in there, give them a couple bucks, pay them to do a little coaching gig on TV, get them some play. Hey, put old Rich Ace Franklin on there. No, instead you got him over there being fucking executive VP for ONE FC or some shit. What the fuck are you guys doing? It's definitely not my favorite way that they've handled it, but there it is.
Fights like Condit versus Alves, a couple fucking veterans, one training with an amazing camp at Jackson's who can bring in a ton of great assistant coaches. The other one a veteran training down in South Florida. A ton of amazing coaches that he has that he can bring down as assistants. Both of them fighting for, a top 5 spot in their division. That is the perfect kind of fight you want. Not this weird shit where you have Conor, who's an interim champion, against Faber, who's like number 4, and the two aren't going to fight. I mean, and bringing up again that weird interaction they had in the tunnels of the MGM Grand Garden Arena.
0 to 10 interaction they had?
Literally, I was just about to say 0 to 10.
So, my bad.
How fake was that shit? Like, literally, before both guys were even slated as coaches, everything I saw on Twitter, that was fake. That was fake as fuck. Fake. How fake was that? And then when they're announced coaches, which I believe, if memory serves me correctly, the news about them coaching the Ultimate Fighter, I hate to get too what is the word I'm looking for? Too man, I can't
sleuthy.
Sleuthy. No. I hate to look back, but man, the word will come to me, and Hindsight? I'll be kicking myself in the fucking dick.
Retrospect.
But
reflection.
I believe you and I were sitting at the Hooters at the Hooters Hotel in Las Vegas when the news came down that Faber and McGregor would be the next coaches, and we were at the Hooters bar at the Hooters Hotel in Las Vegas, and we both looked at each other like, what? This doesn't make any goddamn sense. Sentimental, maybe? I don't know. That isn't the word. God damn it. Goddamn me and my green goddamn medicine.
Oh boy, yeah, no, it's one of those moments. Like, man, do you remember where you were when you heard Conor McGregor and Uriah Faber were going to be coaching the next season?
When you heard about
the
stupid ass bullshit, yeah.
Oh my god, the stupidest thing since global warming. the stupidest thing since the dinosaurs. Wait, what? No, but no, it was just baffling, and it was like as soon as the fight was over, almost like as soon as McGregor had just put the finishing touches on Mendez, like they filmed this locker room scene, and then like put out the clip, and then like 20 minutes later, oh, they're the new coaches on Tough. It's like, are you fucking serious? Like,
I actually remember it different. I think the initial footage came out before the Mendez fight.
oh, is that right? Oh yeah, or that very well could be the case. I mean, hey, that fight week was fantastic. I don't claim to be in a state to remember all
I
of
was
it.
drunk and high
100%.
for most of it.
Oh yeah, same. I mean, hey, that was just keeping it 100 right there. We turned up. Um, but yeah, friggin' hey, fools has turned up today.
That's
But
right.
yeah, this is
Hear
just
that coughing in the background, son?
No, I didn't. That's a fine job there. But
Shout out. Mute button.
yeah, son, use it. It's no, just so contrived. I don't like this at all.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell too much on it, but goddamn, it's Conor. I mean, purportedly from the UFC, that is their number one asset, and if they're right, they're fucking pissing it in the wind. Even if he beats Aldo, this is prime time. He just won the interim championship. Most fans, I think, thought Chad would win that fight. Conor won, and now he's going up against Aldo, and the lead up to it isn't going to be about Conor versus Aldo. It's going to be about the tough Conor versus this guy Faber, who he's not going to fight. I mean, if Conor does beat Aldo, it does give the UFC the room, especially if you put Faber up against someone at the Tough 22 finale. Oh man, goddamn, this is gonna feed into the conspiracy theorists, aka Ramsey, so much. If Uriah ends up getting the main event at the Tough 22 finale and wins, and Conor ends up beating Aldo, then it just feeds right into this mega Conor versus Faber matchup. Goddamn. I hate to tell the future, but I just got a vision, and the vision is of Conor versus Faber in the spring after both of them win the main event cards of that weekend. But let's move on, folks. Enough bashing Zuffa and foreseeing the future. We talked about the lightweight title eliminator fight, the likely lightweight title eliminator fight between Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson, December 11th. 8 days later, UFC Orlando, a card I'm actually going to be at. Donald Cerrone versus Rafael dos Anjos, December 19th at the Amway Arena for the lightweight strap. Man, I'm going to be rooting for Donald Cerrone all day here. But the Rafael dos Anjos I saw take the belt from Anthony Pettis was a motherfucker. I mean, the guy looked unbeatable. Who you got in this mid-December scrap between the Cowboy and Rafael dos Anjos?
Boy, I would love to see Cerrone pull this one out. But for me, I'm with you. I think Rafael dos Anjos is just going to steamroll Cerrone. He basically did the first time they fought. This is just going to be 5 rounds of more of the same, in my opinion. Dos Anjos, who knows what it is? A lot of people have been throwing around a lot of rumors and allegations RDA's way, but you know what? He's made some kind of turnaround in his career. Gone from, being that dude getting his jaw broken by fucking Clay Guida to being the UFC champion. And, man, he's been beasting on fools ever since. Cerrone's already been a victim of his, so I've got no reason to think this one won't go the same way. I mean, Rafael Dos Anjos, didn't he, like, they were showing these x-rays. He's got, like, this titanium-plated jaw or something like that. Can you even knock this dude out? Is that even fair for this fight? I mean, couldn't that lead another fighter to break their hand on his jaw or something like that? I mean, what's, where's the fighter safety coming to this? I'm very curious to see, just the logistics. They make me wonder. But either way, I would love to see Cowboy get the win in this one. I'd love to see him put some of those clean Muay Thai skills into practice. And he's certainly got the momentum on his side. That's for damn sure. But, I mean, just with what RDA's been doing lately in combination with his previous victory over Cerrone and the fashion with which that was, because, I mean, hey, Cerrone had a little head of steam going into that match as well, if I recall correctly. I think this is going to Dos Anjos.
Yeah, and Rafael Dos Anjos, who had his jaw broken by Clay Guida back at UFC 117, August 2010, he's claimed that his titanium-fused jaw has broken some hands of later opponents. Dr. Johnny Benjamin has disagreed with RDA, pointing out that the titanium plate in his jaw is measured in millimeters, not centimeters. It's a very thin plate, but you never fucking know. You have steel in your jaw. Come the fuck on.
Dr. Johnny Benjamin don't know shit. I'd say that the fact that they are millimeters makes you more inclined to break your hand, because it's such an incredibly hard. It's a fucking titanium jaw. That's an incredibly hard piece of metal. And the smaller it is, the more localized the impact. It's not spread out. That's a very, very precise point. And, I mean, your fingers aren't exactly your densest bones in your body, regardless of how strengthened and conditioned they are. So, I mean, who knows? But, hey, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, and you look at Donald, man. Such an impressive career. When we heard about this guy back in the WEC fighting Jamie Varner, back when he had a single-digit amount of fights under his belt, since his second loss to Bendo back in the WEC, he's gone 17-3. And this is, these are all Zuffa fights. These are all fights against top-level opponents. And the interesting thing is, he's 17-3. You would expect at least one or two of these three losses to be one-sided. But you look at the three losses, and they are all so one-sided. You have the Nate Diaz loss at UFC 141, where Diaz embarrassed him. And you think, wow, if they fought again now, I think Cerrone might win. You have the Pettis fight where he got body kicked, TKO'd in the first round. And you think, man, if they fought again, maybe Pettis still wins, but I think it's closer than a first round TKO for Pettis. The RDA fight is the one fight I watch where you just look at the two skill sets and you're like, man, RDA just pillar to post dominated him and has gotten better and better and better. Yeah, Cowboy is on an 8-win winning streak currently, and he deserves the title shot for sure. But I'm not sure stylistically how he wins the fight, because, this is one of those things where Dos Anjos seems to have a similar skill set of Cowboy, just everything he does a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd say that's the perfect analysis for it. I mean, really, you know what, though? I don't know actually about the striking. Dos Anjos does not have better striking than Cowboy, but he's got the pressure. I mean, I don't think he's got better striking than Anthony Pettis, but
yeah.
Although, hey, he did piece him up, something quite special in their fight. But he's got that pressure.
I think that first round where Dos Anjos, I think, broke Pettis' orbital or broke something to do with his eye. I forget if it was a deep cut near his eye or if he actually broke his orbital, but I do think that factored big time into that title fight at UFC 185 back in March.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was just a superb contest though. I mean, I can't wait to see how this one plays out. RDA just he's got the pressure style that, much like the one that Diaz implemented against Cerrone. Just coming forward, it may not have been technically crisper per se than Donald Cerrone, but just the style with which he implies his techniques. He's got that. Plus, he's got the confidence of that titanium jaw. He's not going to get knocked out. But the ground advantage, as slick as Cerrone is, and that's the thing, he's slick as snot on a doorknob, to borrow a phrase. But RDA, that's where he shines. That's where his power comes in, and now his striking has evolved to the point where he can stand and bang with Cerrone, and even better set up that game. So it's just a dangerous fight. It's going to be a pretty violent fight either way that it turns out. But RDA, I believe, is going to either pound out or submit Cerrone and retain his belt.
And I'll lose my shit in the crowd if Cerrone wins. I'm a big fan of Donald. I'm a good luck charm of his as well. I was there for the Evan Dunham fight where he got back in the win column after Rafael Dos Anjos at UFC 167. I was there watching him at UFC 182 against Miles Jury and again at 187 against John McDessie. So I've seen 3 Cerrone fights and he's won all 3. Vegas.
Hell yeah.
Vegas sees it kind of like we do. They have Rafael Dos Anjos a pretty stiff favorite at minus 320 to Cerrone's plus 260. But we will see. For those curious about Vegas odds for the other fights we've broken down. Connor minus 175 against Aldo, who's plus 155. Nurmagomedov minus 300 to Ferguson's plus 220. We got Condit and Lawler actually pretty close. Lawler minus 150, Condit plus 130. And the fights we broke down of what were they? I guess that was it. I'm scrolling up. Man, one thing that stands out, I love Cormier, but he's minus 360 to Alexander Gustafsson's plus 300. I'm a huge Cormier fan, but I feel like the line should be closer there than minus 360. Like, man, a Gustafsson bet quadruples your money if he wins. Really, I feel like he's got a little better chance than that. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually not too opposed to those odds, just because I feel it's fairly indicative of Gus's. I mean, he did fall short to Phil Davis, although that was forever ago. We saw how he got beasted on by Anthony Johnson. Although, I mean, in my mind, he easily beat John Jones. That went down as a loss. So you bring in Daniel Cormier, former Strikeforce heavyweight Grand Prix champion, current UFC light heavyweight champion, Olympic wrestling team member for the courtesy of all our Asian listeners. And, I think that's how our line ends up where it's at. I mean, Gustafsson, he's really come a long way. I mean, maybe it should be a little bit closer in his favor because, I mean, he's got a significant size and reach advantage. So, and he's really worked on using his knees and stuff lately as well, which can be hell for a wrestler, especially. I mean, this is Gustafsson. He can really use these knees. He's going to have just a great advantage there. So, I could see it being a little closer, but hey, I can see why it is where it is.
Yeah. And one more line I actually want to talk about until we move on to a couple fights that were scheduled for UFC 195, a couple championship fights. It just caught in my eye. Dustin Poirier versus Joseph Duffy. To me, when that fight was made, I thought, yeah, it'll be a close fight. Maybe Poirier has a little bit of an edge. Joseph Duffy, minus 225. What do you think about that? Poirier, a big underdog, plus 200 almost.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, especially with what we've seen from Poirier since he moved up to 155.
Yeah, he's been a beast.
Yeah, he's been doing quite well for himself. I did not anticipate his move up to go as well as it did, especially considering he was a perennial top contender at 145 pounds. But he's looked really good at 155, so I was definitely surprised to hear that
big
line.
Win against Carlos Ferreira, who was a big up-and-comer. Finished Yancy Medeiros, who was on a lot of people's lists as a big prospect. Finished both guys in the first round. No problem.
Yeah, quite the show for Poirier in his first two fights at 155 in the UFC. So it was quite surprising to see these lines. I think Duffy's definitely getting a lot of hype from that. McGregor, I mean, that's really what it is. Last dude to beat McGregor, so he's got that shine on him just by proxy of having the McGregor name attached to him right now. That's I think that's a lot of what this line is right here. Of course, Duffy, he's a bright prospect himself. This will be Poirier's third bright prospect he's taken on in the UFC's lightweight division since he's made his mark there. So it will be a great fight. I don't think the line really should be where it's at. I mean, especially with what we've seen from Poirier. It should. I think this is one where it should be a little bit closer for sure, if not significantly closer.
And Duffy finished Conor on the ground quick. This is in 2010. This is almost 5 years ago before Conor really was able to shore up his ground game. And before that, he beat Norman Park in the first round. Let's look more recently. Let's look since he's joined the UFC. Again, 2 first-round finishes. Very impressive. Who are they against? Ivan George, who's 2-2 in the UFC. Also lost to Hadigo Dam. And to Jake Lindsay, who, as much as I like this guy because it's my name and my mom's name back to back,
Batman and the Librarian.
He's 0-3 in the UFC. He got finished by John Tuck and Olivier Aubin-Mercier. So let's not give him too much credit for the 2 UFC wins he has under his belt. Yeah, they are first round finishes, which even if they are bums, that is respectable to get 2 first-round finishes, but I give Dustin Poirier much more credit for first-round finishes against Carlos Ferreira and Yancy Medeiros than I do Joseph for his wins against Jake Lindsay and Ivan George. If it's me and I'm in Vegas and I'm, of course, placing a legal bet on the fight, it's on Poirier for sure, 100%. I think Poirier does one of 2 things: wins the fight or loses a close, hard-fought match.
Oh, absolutely. Poirier is as live an underdog as you can get, and especially with those lines, I mean, I'd love to exploit that. I need to look a little bit closer at the tape, but heck, I'd probably lean towards Poirier in that matchup.
Yeah.
Duffy's a good bright prospect, but Poirier, he's been there, and man, he just looks real good since moving up.
Real good. Speaking about looking real good. Speaking of looking real good, Ronda Rousey, always looking real good.
Ow.
This recent matchup against Holly Holm, I don't know how good that's looking. Holly Holm, she's an amazing fighter. She was a fucking badass boxer, but in the UFC, she's just lacked the confidence that I've wanted to see out of her. Yeah, she was tearing shit up in Legacy. I think she had a Bellator fight, looking dominant. But then she comes to the UFC and she gets a split decision against Raquel Pennington, who's a middling fighter at best. Then she wins a decision against Marion Renault. You know, if she had finished both of these girls, I would have been more into this fight. But the fact that she's just sort of fought for the wins, and the Pennington fight especially, Pennington is nowhere near where you need to be to get a fight against Ronda Rousey. And everyone expected the Tate fight. I think Tate deserved it. You look at the odds. Sportsbooks have odds up for Rousey fights against Tate, Cyborg, and Holm, because they know the Tate fight is probably going to happen again, because Tate is the second best fighter in the division. Rousey is put at minus 1,200 against Tate, minus 320 against Rousey, and minus a whopping 1,450 against Holm. You know, it just shows you Holm, I don't know, this is going to be another Vine fight, going to be another quick, you know, I hope Holm doesn't talk shit about her dad or anything crazy again. I don't know, this is just going to be another quick work, you know, I say work, not in the meaning of that it's going to be a fixed fight. But like our boy Brock Lesnar said, this is a super athlete in a very weak division. And when Brock's comments made the news, it surprised me much more. Not that he said it, but that it made the news. Like, no shit, Brock is stating the obvious. This is Ronda Rousey, a girl who could probably beat a lot of men. A girl who, even if women's bantamweight was the strongest division in the UFC, would probably still dominate it. Unfortunately, it's a very weak division. And that's no one's fault but America. This is your fault. No, this is no one's fault but just the nature of the world, that you're going to have a lot more male than female fighters. Holly Holm, you know, she's an amazing boxer, and honestly, if I was in Holm's camp, I might even tell her to say some shit about Ronda Rousey's dad, only because Rousey decided after bitch Correa talked a bunch of shit, Rousey, to my surprise, decided to stand up and punch with bitch, which I thought, you know, yeah, she said she was going to do it, but I thought, you know, Rousey is obviously the grappling technician. If she decides to take bitch down, then she has a 99% chance of winning. If she wants to stand and trade with bitch, she has a 97% chance of winning. Still probably going to win, but it lowers her chances. And Ronda's smart. She's not an idiot. She's going to go for the best way possible. Ronda decided to stand and trade and knock bitch out, which, yeah, you know, the 97% chance ended up working out. She's not going to be able to stand with Holm. And this is the one, yeah, maybe, like, if she were to try and stand and bang with Holm, Holm would hold her own. But that's not going to happen. Rousey's going to run up, or Holm's going to run up. I don't know who ends up being, you know, the one who engages, because Holm might pull a cat Zingano and try and be the aggressor, just get tapped out. This fight, I would be shocked if it ended over a minute, which, your boy made a lot of money betting in Vegas on, the odds were plus 300 that the fight ended in the first minute against bitch Kohea. What? Plus 300 it ends in the first minute? What? Like, I was in a hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas, eating Pizza Hut, just dancing the night away when the fight was over. Like, this was the easiest money your boy ever earned, son. Like, I didn't bet much at all, but I quadrupled my money saying that Ronda Rousey would end the fight in the first minute. Like, what? Enough about me making crazy money off UFC 190 in Little Rock, Arkansas, eating Pizza Hut. But this is going to be another sub 1 minute fight. This is another joke. Ronda Rousey is I don't know. It's, just like Brock said, it isn't fair. She's fighting women who have no business to be in the cage with her, but that's just the nature of the women's bantamweight division. And I don't know if there's much more to say. It's a joke, but at the same time, I think Tate Rousey is a joke. Rousey beat her ass twice. I think it would be a quick finish. Cyborg seems to be the only marketable match, and even then, I think Rousey would still finish that fight quick. To me, the only story is, how many wins does Rousey want to rack up before she decides to retire and be the next female Rock?
Well, this fight was certainly a shock when it was announced to most of us. I mean, this fight, Ronda said it was happening. Tate said it was happening. Dana White basically said it was happening. I sit back and I try and find any kind of reason I can think of for why they made this match. And I was like, is it because Holly Holm kind of looks like Amy Schumer? And Amy Schumer is pretty hot right now. So, like, I mean, Ronda Rousey, of course. Ronda is just...
Would you?
Would I? Oh, sure. I don't even know who we're referring to, but all three in question. Sure thing. And we could go into detail on that, but yeah, that's possibly for another podcast.
She can get
it. Anytime. But that's terrible. Don't want to certainly demean. Well, I'm sure we're talking about Amy Schumer, but anyways, talking about. Hey, it's all right. That you can. The Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm fight. I mean, I must say, though, the one thing I find marketable about this is that Holly Holm, regardless of how underwhelming she has looked since coming to the UFC, and she has, in spite of, as you mentioned, Jake, her storied boxing career. I mean, she was a multi-weight class women's boxing champion, one of the best pound-for-pound women's boxing champions that there's ever been. And, she did have she had some sweet head kick knockouts in the regional circuits when she came over to MMA. And she just, she has not looked so sharp since coming to the UFC. She has not looked like she's up to the challenge of Ronda Rousey. But the one thing I find marketable about this fight, the one way you can still market this one, is simply for the fact she's one of the best women to have ever boxed, quite simply. And you put that against a Olympic bronze medal judoka, and who is one of the best female mixed martial artists to ever compete, arguably the best. And that's one of the reasons mixed martial arts was essentially invented. This is judo versus boxing. Which style is better? It's a throwback fight in that respect, and I love those kinds of fights because that is what drew me to the UFC in the first place. Growing up a student of martial arts, that was always the question: what is the best mixed martial art? And UFC was invented specifically to answer that question. Of course, it has become what it is today, which I find is really who can apply all mixed martial arts the best, who can put them all together the best. That's what we're seeing the evolution into today. But I like that old throwback aspect. This is the judo versus the boxing. Who's going to win? And these are two world-class athletes in that respect. So I do like it for that. Of course, I always love seeing Ronda Rousey punch Miesha Tate's lights out. That's always a fun
and
thing.
I'll be the first to tell you that I'm not against hitting women.
Oh man,
Shout out to the ninja.
well, I don't even know where that drop came from. That is fantastic.
I love using drops against people.
Oh my gosh, you son of a bitch. However, I think Ronda Rousey, she very well could stand and trade with Holly Holm. We've heard Ronda's coach say, "Oh yeah, she's knocking out world champions. She's knocking out boxing champions in sparring practice," or he's making ridiculous claims like that. Well,
I think Ronda's striking coach, Edmund Tarverdian, is a complete joke. I'll be the one to fucking say it.
Yeah, that seems to be a large consensus going around.
I mean, you look at videos of Ronda shadowboxing, and yes, she is a UFC champion. She deserves it. She is a fucking beast. Her striking is not good. And this is not me saying it as amateur podcast host. This is hearing it from professional boxing coaches. Like, Ronda's striking is not good.
I mean, it's improving. Her aggressiveness is really her key, and she does seem to have some power. I mean, she's a built chick, that is for sure. Very strong, and the way she dropped Betch Kohea, you can definitely see that, as well as all of her other fights and what she's been doing all these other girls lately. She's coming together. Is it the best? I mean, no, she doesn't have the complete package yet. She's certainly got a ways to go with the angles, the head movement, and just the technicality of the striking overall. Is she better than Miesha Tate? I would say absolutely so. She would probably piece Miesha Tate up once again, probably crack her orbital bone, just like Sarah McMahon did in their fight last time they fought. But I think just with the pure aggressiveness, I mean, we've seen a quite tentative Holm in the UFC. And I think if Rousey just goes in there and gets in her face, I mean, she's just going to overwhelm her like she does most chicks. I mean, unless she plays a patient game, that would be interesting to see. That's the only way I see this fight making it longer than a minute, longer than a round, is just if they're both kind of patient, if Rousey respects Holm's striking too much. But I think even from what we've seen in Holmes' fights, her striking, she doesn't look like she's putting a lot of power into it. I mean, maybe she changes up the way she's training. Maybe now that she's got a couple UFC fights under her belt as opposed to just the one, maybe she'll come out a little more relaxed and a little more into her rhythm. You know, who knows? Who knows what we'll see when that fight goes down. But I mean, it's just, you have to predict Ronda Rousey is winning this fight all day, be it stand up or on the ground.
All day, not a problem. I expect another goddamn pound cake. There will be another title fight on the co-main event, another women's belt on the line, and that's Joanna Jędrzejczyk taking on Claudia Gadelha. They fought once before back at the UFC on Fox Dos Santos versus Miocic card in December 2014, and it was a controversial fight. A lot of people, myself included, scored at 29-28 Gadelha, even though Joanna Jędrzejczyk got the win. This time around, though, I think Joanna's game has evolved and improved a lot more than Claudia's. I think it'll still be a close fight, but I'm picking Joanna to win the rematch. Joanna has just looked so good against, Esparza, Penne. Just beat the brakes off of both girls. She's now 10-0, and I think she'll be 11-0 after UFC 195. I don't know if it's official yet, but I think it's highly rumored that will be the co-main event of the January 2nd co-main event at the MGM Grand. Who you got, Jędrzejczyk versus Gadelha?
Man, I really hope that is the co-main event to the Ronda Rousey fight, because that would just be a spectacular card. I mean, those are combined for the best female mixed martial artists and best female athletes on the planet today. Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Claudia Gadelha, the rematch of their first fight, that's just going to be epic. I mean, I'm glad it's got 5 rounds, just in case it ends up needing multiple rounds. I'm with you, though. Joanna, she's just got that momentum, although Gadelha, she's also looked super good since she came back. Rebounded quite nicely from that controversial split decision, as you mentioned earlier. But Joanna, she's just really putting things together. I think she's really believing in her sprawl game and her grappling game and her takedown defense. And we saw her drop Gadelha towards the end of the first round in their first fight. And I think she's just going to have all the confidence in the world, not just from that, but having gotten the win in their first fight, having won all of her subsequent fights, being the reigning and having defended her belt. She's the champ right now, so she's got all the momentum on her side. She seems like a very strong fighter mentally, which is something I certainly look for. Claudia does as well. She seems like quite the game fighter. She's another fighter that really has a superb overall package. She's great with the striking. I mean, she mixes it up very well. I'm one of those people that thought she probably deserved the victory over Jędrzejczyk in their first fight. She had some great strikes. She's a very strong 115-pound strawweight woman, and she's just good anywhere that the fight goes. But yeah, I think Joanna, she's just going to be able to put those combos out there. I think she may be able to drop Gadelha again, and she's just going to put that clinic on there. And I mean, I'm seeing another TKO victory for her, be it early, be it late. I think Jędrzejczyk's getting the finish.
And it sucks for Gadelha because, she's a hell of a fighter, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion. But, you mentioned it. Jędrzejczyk is just, she's evolved a lot. And her striking is on point. I think she has the tools to keep it standing up. If it goes to the mat, Gadelha, I think, has a big advantage. But if it's standing up, it is all Joanna. I do want to do a little game show with. Let's see. Do I have the game show music up here? I think I do. P Money.
Oh.
Can you spell Jędrzejczyk, as in Joanna's last name? I'll give you the first letter is J. We all know it's Joanna Jet. I won't include the weird symbols above and below the letter, but
Appreciate that.
Can you spell Jędrzejczyk?
Oh my goodness. Okay. This is no computer. Not going to Google this right now. Oh, okay. That's J-E.
That's right.
D.
Yep.
R.
That's right.
Z.
Oh my God, you've gone way further. Jesus Christ! All right, the fact you've gone JEDRZE is way past, I think, any MMA fan, and you just deserve a prize for that. But JEDRZE.
Z. No.
C is not the next one. I'll give you 3 strikes. It's not C, although C does appear later on in her name. JEDRZE. Can you guess the next letter?
Okay. D. No. Oof.
That's 2.
It's C. C.
I already said it's not C. It's not D. It's JEDRZE. And it's a letter familiar to the beginning of her first last name.
Oh, J.
Oh, wait. I didn't mean to play that. I meant to play this one. Oh, wait. No, I meant to play this one. Yeah, you got it right. It is another J. JEDRZE and a J. There's 4 letters left. And legitimately, if you can get them all right, I'll PayPal you $5 because none of them are easy.
CZYK.
All right, you're looking at a goddamn.
I am not. Hand of God right now.
CZYK is correct, and P Money, I'm gonna PayPal you $5 after that because that is the last 4 letters. It is JEDRZE JCY. Yeah, the last 4 letters is CZYK. I don't know how in the literal fuck you were able to guess those last letters, but you got it right. I'm gonna PayPal you $5. I still, in my heart of hearts, think you're a cheater the way you were able to belt that out. Just CZYK. But you know what? A deal is a goddamn deal.
Well, you know what? It's pure comedy too because hand to God, their audience, we did not discuss this bit. This bit was not on the run sheet.
No, it wasn't.
And Jake and I did not even have this conversation, but I've actually been trying to learn Joanna Jędrzejczyk's how to spell her name because as an aspiring mixed martial arts journalist, I feel you got to know how to spell that without Googling, without autocorrect. I mean, this woman is the 115-pound strawweight champion. She's one of the best in the world. You look at that goddamn striking. She's one of the best strikers in the UFC. I'd say she's the best striker in the UFC. Pound for pound, you put her skill set into anybody's striking arsenal. I mean, those chops are just ridiculous. So yeah, been trying to learn that. You know, trying to gain a little culture.
Well, I will not back down from the deal, and I will chat a little bit with you when the show's over to get your email so I can PayPal you $5 but hats off. I believe that is all we have to break down except for the upcoming UFC Holloway Oliveira card, except for one thing: the Anderson Silva 12-month NASE ban. NASC ban, the Nevada State Athletic Commission ban, which was one of the biggest clusterfucks of all time. The fact that the NSAC not only tested them with Smurtle, which none of this made any sense. They were testing the fighters with Smurtle, and last minute apparently they decide, oh yeah, we're going to test them with Quest Diagnostics too, which Quest is cheaper, so it makes literally 0 sense that you're going to have an expensive test lined up for all the fighters and last minute be like, you know what, we're going to test them with this cheap test too, just so it kind of puts us out in the open in case one fighter tests positive on one and negative on the other, which is exactly what happens for Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz. Silva tests positive on Smurtle, negative on Quest. Diaz tests negative on Smurtle, positive on Quest. And it's just the biggest clusterfuck. The biggest, there is literally no reason why you would do this. And again, go back and listen to the most recent episode of Larry Pepe on the FRB show. You can visit frbshow.com for links to the show on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. Larry being a authority on all this, especially PEDs, himself being a former bodybuilding journalist. He really lays out in detail how much of how stupid it was on the NSAC, not just with deciding to bring Quest on board for no reason, but how it is so egregious that the NSAC didn't check that both fighters were eligible even after the failed test, which Anderson failed a test weeks before the fight, and somehow that never got to the NSAC. And I think any fan who knows what he's talking about, of course the NSAC found out. Of course they knew he failed his test. But guess what? They're in the back pocket of the Fertittas, and Silva versus Diaz was a huge fight that was going to and did make the UFC a ton of money, so they're not going to let it get canceled. Come on, people. Even if Silva has been tested positive and they know he's on performance enhancers, and Nick Diaz is the victim here, honestly, because, you know, let's be serious. Zuffa probably knew, the NSAC probably knew that Silva was testing positive for steroids, and they let the fight happen. Imagine if Nick Diaz would have gotten hit with a crazy combo and died. It would have been the end of the UFC, to be completely honest. Maybe the end of the NSAC. Maybe the end of the way that we do business with athletic commissions. I mean, just a complete failure. The Commissioner Bennett would have gotten thrown in jail. Just a complete failure all around. And then we fast forward to this hearing we had a week or two ago, where we have talk of this blue vial and Cialis and Viagra, and that's why Silva took it. And it's just one of the most laughably stupid stories and moments, and the more you dig into it and the more you want to educate yourself about what happened, the stupider it gets and the more infuriating it gets. And like I said, if you want to hear more about it, visit visit frbshow.com. Listen to the most recent podcast with Larry Pepe. I think the most recent one actually is Matt Santos, but the one before that is Larry Pepe. Listen to them both, but more importantly, the one with Larry, it's a brain buster, man. The fact that there's millions of dollars out there, and these elected officials and people in charge are supposed to know what they're doing, and there's just so much incompetence at foot, from the athletic commissioners to the attorneys in charge of representing Anderson Silva, who myself, a first-year law student, could have done so much more than his attorneys did. Picking out, you know, when you've got a negative drug test out there that you can use as evidence, but instead you just come out with this cockamamie bullshit about sexual enhancers. It's all so stupid. Do you have any thoughts on this before we move to the upcoming Saskatoon card, P-Money?
Well, my only thoughts on this are he wouldn't be coming up with these cockamamie ridiculous stories if there weren't some hint of guilt. Because like you said, there is that negative sample there. Why would you not be falling back on that? I mean, you are saying you thought it was like a sexual enhancer, but you know what? I mean, Cialis, Viagra, things like those, used in Tour de France. Those are, as far as I know, banned substances anyhow. Because they are used for athletic benefit. To the best of my understanding, it works similar to a nitric oxide, just where there's more oxygen to the blood by taking these things. So a lot of athletes will take these drugs as performance enhancers for athletics, as opposed to their more common prescription. So it's like either way. I mean, I don't know. You're cheating, brah. And it's so sad. brah, you're cheating and tarnishing your legacy. And it's just a shame how this whole debacle went down. It's just another move that casts more shame on the UFC and the Nevada State Athletic Commission, which, I mean, we all know that the ties that Zuffa has to the Nevada State Athletic Commission. It's just unfortunate what's happened here. I mean, Silva's suspended for a year. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, was Silva ever, going to come back? I mean, he might have come back for another fight, but I'm just kind of bummed over the whole thing, and I mean, who knows when we'll see Anderson Silva come back, and who will ever face if he does come back.
Yeah, and man, I heard Tim Kennedy on The Fighter and the Kid lobbying for a fight against Silva, and I would like this just because I love Tim Kennedy, and I think he could beat Anderson at this point in both guys' career. But we'll see. It's a 1-year ban, which is retrograded to when the fight happens. So in effect, it's like a 3.5 month ban. So we will see who he gets matched up against next. Let's break down this Saskatoon card and get the fuck out of here. The prelims are all kind of a joke. I'm not even gonna talk about most of them. Chris Beal, a favorite. Nikita Krylov, an underdog. Yves Jabouin, an underdog. Sam Stout, an underdog. You've got a lot of up-and-coming guys, favorites against guys who we've heard about a lot. Let's go ahead and break down the first four fights in the main card, too. Marina Moroz taking on Valerie Letourneau. Moroz, I feel like, is better all around, a better grappler, a harder hitter. I feel like she wins that strawweight bout. Tony Sims against Olivier Aubin-Mercier. This is really the first test Olivier has gotten. He lost to Chad Laprise via split decision at that tough finale, and then took on two bums in Jake Lindsay and David Michaud. Tony Sims is maybe the first live dog he's fought. Better standing up, but I think Olivier has the tools to bring it to the ground, where he obviously has the advantage. The guy he lost to in the tough finale, Chad Laprise, is also fighting Francisco Trinaldo. And sort of alternatively, I think Trinaldo maybe has the tools on the ground, but Laprise has the better striking, has the better wrestling, is going to win that one. And Patrick Cote against Josh Berkman, the last fight we'll break down before we talk about the main and co-main event. I think both guys are pretty similar. They're both sort of workhorses. They're both guys who are really trying to up their stock after looking kind of shitty in the last 2 or 3 fights. But I'm picking Berkman as when it comes to that transition game, wrestling, scrambling, I feel like Berkman has a bit of an advantage, works at a quicker and a stronger pace standing up. So I'll go ahead and take Josh Berkman over Patrick Cote. Also a slight favorite in Vegas, -25 compared to Cote's +115. We'll save the co-main and main event for their own, but what do you think about the rest of these fights that are going down in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan?
Well, they might not be the biggest name fights, but I think it's a decent main card for a Fox Sports 1 event. Yeah. I mean, Moroz versus Letourneau, that's an interesting strawweight match. Both these ladies, they got a little momentum on their side, so I'll like to see how that goes down. I mean, we're really seeing these fights pretty much the same all the way around. I like Moroz, Mercier, Laprise in those respective fights. I mean, of course, everybody's a live dog in MMA. But yeah, those should be some fun scraps. I like Mercier over Sims. He's just a very strong grappler. I think he'll probably be able to put the pressure on and get the W. And yeah, Laprice versus Trinaldo. I think Laprice. Especially with these guys fighting in their home country, they're going to be coming out strong. And Laprice, young, undefeated. I like him over Trinaldo, the aging veteran. Although he is a strong, crafty 155er, should be some solid action there on the main card. And Cote over Berkman as well. Berkman versus Cote. That's a fight. I mean, I think Cote definitely has a good chance in there. Very even fight. These are two guys just definitely in the twilight of their careers. I could see this going either way. Cote, he's been looking a little shaky. He used to have the iron chin. It's still holding up there, but I mean, he's definitely showing those road miles, as is Berkman. Really, Berkman has not done so well since returning to the UFC. Coming from World Series of Fighting, and I mean, even World Series of Fighting did not come over as a champion. So I think Cote definitely could get this one done in this fight. I would not be surprised either way this fight went.
Yeah, and man, maybe we should start meeting up before shows, just because we agree so much on fights. Maybe we should start playing devil's advocate a little bit, like ESPN First Take.
Oh no,
the co-main event: Neil Magny versus Eric Silva. This is going to go one of two ways, and both ways I kind of feel like the fight's going to play out the same. Eric Silva, known for big first round flurries and then sort of tailing off. Neil Magny, he's very punchable. Even in his win against his most recent win against Han Yu Lim, this past May, he took a lot of shots, and it looked like at multiple points that he might get finished. And yeah, he ended up winning, but he had to weather that storm. I think no matter what goes down in this fight, Eric Silva is going to bring the heat to him in the first round. Neil Magny, who does not have the best striking defense, is going to have to weather the storm. And if you told me right now, if the fight ends in the first or second round, I have Eric Silva all day. I think Eric Silva for sure wins. If the fight ends in the third round or goes to a decision, I think Neil Magny is the winner, 100% for sure. This is one of those fights where I probably disagree with the odds more than any fight. I'm picking a Neil Magny decision. He's plus 170. You look at a before and after of Eric Silva. Eric Silva's off the juice, ladies and gentlemen. He has you look at pictures of him, and he's looked like this muscle-bound freak and just been, I want to say juiced, but that kind of gives away my point. He looks fucking jacked up to the gills and looks like a monster. And you look at him this time around at the weigh-ins. Look, the guy is in way better shape than me. The guy's for sure in shape, for sure a UFC fighter, for sure has dedicated his life to this, but doesn't look anything like he has in the past, ladies and gentlemen. The guy, let's just come out and say it, the guy looks like he was juicing in the past and now he's not. And that's going to mean a lot. It's going to mean he has a smaller gas tank. Going to mean he's not throwing with as much power as he's known to throw with. And even not have the chin he's known to have. like I said, I think this is all going to come to how much Neil Magny can weather and whether he can weather that early storm, no pun intended. And I think he is able to do it. I have Magny via decision. I think Silva wins the first round and lands a lot, and Magny ends up getting that second and third round. And I got Magny decision on this one, my upset special. Who you got?
Well, you know what, Jake? For a second there, the way things were sounding when you were first breaking this down, I was going to say, let's play devil's advocate. But then you threw a fucking curveball and ended up picking Magny anyways. I'm going Magny as well. Son of a bitch. You know what? And hey, last time we were both picking the upset. And the line swayed, actually. Last podcast we did when we were both calling for OSP. OSP was even money to share a slight favorite. That line ended up shifting. And Teixeira ended up being the underdog when that fight ended up happening.
Vegas listens to the MMA podcast.
It's true, tastemakers. However, I mean, although my Amanda Nunes and Benio Dariush underdog tips paid off, but sadly the OSP one did not. But anyways, I digress. I like Magny for this one. He's 7-1 in his last 8, and the only one he lost to was Damian Maia. Even with Damian Maia, he was able to last to the second round after getting thoroughly dominated in the first round with that top game. He was at least able to survive to the second.
And that was, 3 weeks ago? I feel like that just happened.
That was like, it had to be 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, UFC 190.
Yes, sir.
I was in Little Rock, son. Ordering goddamn Pizza Hut, jacking off on washcloths, huh?
Oh, damn, son, straight hotel style. Yeah, son. That's Neil Magny. I want to say this is going to be his 9th fight since February 2014. I mean, he's putting on that cowboy pace. Cowboy who's 15-3 since February 2011. Crazy pace.
Crazy pace.
But I think Magny is going to be able to put it on Silva. Silva, his last 2 losses were TKOs. Magny, he's rangier. He may be a little quicker. As you mentioned, the juice is no longer loose with Silva. Again, also in better shape than I am, but he definitely had a little bit of a spare tire thing going on there.
I don't know. You're in decent shape. You're in better shape than me.
I mean, I'm in decent shape, Eric Silva is better shape than me. He's a UFC fighter now. I'll give it up. If I
had to choose between you and Eric Silva to back me up in a fight, no offense, Pat, I'm going Eric Silva.
None taken. I mean, I got cardio, but sometimes that just leads to a longer ass whooping. But anyways, no, this fight, I think Magny, he's gonna put it on Silva. I think he's gonna get a nice little TKO in this fight. Could come early. Silva just does not look like he's in the same shape. Whether you want to say it's PEDs or whatever it is. Hey, I'll tell you what. If it ain't PEDs, it's an injury. It's lack of motivation. It's
Could
not a
come
good
early,
diet.
Yep.
I mean, whatever it is, it's not good. He does not look as good as he has before, and he's still a young ass fighter. You should be maintaining that physique. I mean, look at Sly Stallone. He's not on
the gimmick.
Oh no, he's not rocking a spare tire like Eric Silva is. It Sly's in his 60s because he's maintained that body, and as a world class athlete, I mean, what happened there? How did you go from having a 20-pack to having a 6-pack with some shake on the side? I mean, I don't know. But, I think stylistically, Magny, I just think he's going to be able to take it. Mostly just because of the height and reach. But I think he'll be able to put a couple combos together. work some angles, fight long, and be able to get a little TKO on Silva for the main event victory.
I like it. And, I'm not ruling out Silva at all. I still think Magma, he's still going to have that early flurry that Magny will have to weather, just like he did Han Gyu Lim. But if he's able to do it, I think the fight is all his. Which leaves us with the main event, Max Holloway against Charles Oliveira. But before we do so, let's get to the stat of the day.
Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Here comes the stat of the day!
Max Holloway has landed 6 knockouts and 667 significant strikes in the UFC. Both of those put him number 1 on the all-time list among UFC featherweights.
Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Stat of the day! Here comes the stat of the day!
Big shout out to the Dan Patrick Show, Jamie Josta, and Patrick Seaton O'Connor for that drop. And yeah, we don't really think about Max Holloway as a historically great UFC featherweight, but I mean the guy is up there. He's first all-time knockdowns landed, first all-time significant strikes landed, and second all-time as far as significant strike defense goes at 69.7%. The only guy in front of him there is the greatest UFC featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo. Holloway, you watch him, you watch his fights, and God, talk about an underrated fighter. The guy is just so fundamentally sound. From watching him land these switch kick punches to watching his footwork and seeing, where he is both on defense and offense. He's one of the best, man. In his last I'm looking it up now. His last 11 fights, I guess he's 9-1. Or sorry, 9-2. He's 9-2. A split decision against Dennis Bermudez at UFC 160, which you could argue he won, and the unanimous decision against current interim champion Conor McGregor. Just look at his last few fights, man. The KOs against Clay Collard, Akira Corsani, the very one-sided decision against Cole Miller, and the third round finish, the guillotine choke against Cub Swanson. Cub being a huge favorite against Holloway going into it. This is a guy in Max Holloway who is not only on top, if not toward the top of the division. He's going to be there for a long time, people. He's 23 years old. He's younger than 95% of the UFC. He's likely a future UFC champion, even if Conor owns it, Aldo owns it. Both of these guys will be long gone and retired. Max Holloway is 23 fucking years old, and he's got 16 fights under his belt. He's never been KO'd. The guy doesn't have brain damage. This is a guy who potentially won't just be champion, but could end up being one of the best, of all time. I mean, I can't think of a guy who has reached the heights that Holloway has by age 23. Can you, Pat? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well, I can think of one person that has reached that pinnacle. I would say that was Charles Oliveira.
Wow, very good. Wow, yeah.
I mean, he's 25 himself. He came into the UFC, and I mean, of course, he had John Jones.
When he beat Brookins in the Tough 15 finale in 2012, he was right there.
He smashed him. That was one of my favorite. He
That
landed,
anaconda?
if I recall correctly, well, what led up to it. Oh no, or I might be confusing it. No, I think I'm confusing.
The fight
with Jose.
before was the calf slicer, if you're thinking of that.
No, I was thinking the face mush to elbow combo. I might be confusing that with Jose Aldo, though, in his fight with Jonathan Brookins. Anyways, though, no, both. I mean, Charles Oliveira, he's 25 right now. He's still very young, as is Max Holloway. These guys are both superb. Holloway probably has the striking advantage. He's got the great angles, great footwork. As you mentioned, his numbers are unrivaled in the featherweight division. Oliveira does have some very violent striking himself, though. He uses a real great Muay Thai, 8 points. You know, he's using the elbows, he's using the knees, he's got the punches and kicks. His chin has held up as of late. And, I mean, in his last 3 fights, beating Nick Lentz, Jeremy Stevens, and Hatsuki Yoki, he did beat Andy Ogle before that. But, I mean, those last 3 especially, those are quality 145-pounders. As far as who Max Holloway has on his, you know, I mean, he has quite an impressive win streak, and he does have a win over Cub Swanson, who knocked out Charles Oliveira. So if you're looking at MMA math, that is always a factor. But, I mean, I would take Jeremy Stevens over Cole Miller, Akira Cortesani, Clay Collard, Andre Feely, or Will Chope any day, as well as Hatsuki Yoki. So I would say you can even argue that Charles Oliveira has faced the tougher competition. Man, it's going to be a great fight. These guys, they're very similarly built. And what Max Holloway has standing up on the feet, I'd say Oliveira has on the ground. He is very slick on the ground. Would I put him into Damian Maia category or someone who just has that superior level? I don't know if I could call that just yet. Again, he's 25. He's still learning and growing. These guys very well could be fighting. We could be seeing them for at least another 10 years potentially. Who knows how the course of their careers are going to play out. So we're going to be seeing them for a while. But, man, this is a great fight. I have to go with Holloway here. It's a tough one. I really want to go with the upset in Charles Oliveira, but I'm thinking Holloway is going to be able to overcome this obstacle, and I think he's going to be able to piece up Oliveira, and I think this is another fight. This is a fantastic main event. Definitely going to be a violent fight, and always great to see some of the lighter weight classes getting to headline some of these cards.
Yeah, and Charles Oliveira, just a ground expert. Of his last 14 wins, I believe 11 have come via submission. Your standard, RNCs, arm bars. He's got a couple anaconda chokes. He's got a reverse calf slicer. The guy's got all sorts of sub victories on his record. Holloway, I think has the better footwork. He obviously has the length on him. And like I point out in a lot of fights, who's going to dictate where the fight happens? And if it wasn't for Max Holloway's takedown defense, I would say Oliveira is able to win the fight, is able to take it to the ground and able to sub Holloway out. But you look at Max Holloway, and the guy's game, he has no holes. Every part of his game is somewhere between good and very good. I mean, you look at his takedown defense, and it is very, very good. He's got a great sprawl. He has great balance. His single leg D, his double leg D. You can't take the guy down. Holloway is going to be able to keep the fight standing, and he's going to outbox Oliveira. You look at the spread in Vegas. Holloway's minus 225. I think he should be minus 350. Holloway is going to win this fight hands down, no problem. As sure as I'm going to get P Money's info when this is over so I can PayPal him $5 for being able to correctly spell Joanna Jędrzejczyk after getting 2 strikes. Max Holloway is going to win this fight, and I'm very confident about that. The final question, I guess, on the table before we close this podcast out and play the damn music, where do you put the winner of this fight at the featherweight division? You know, it's interesting. You have Frankie Edgar, who most people would put at the front of the line. Do you match the winner of this against Frankie? Do you put, I mean, I don't know if Frankie, I don't think he's got a fight next. Do you give Frankie the winner of this fight and the winner of that a title fight? It's kind of convoluted as far as what happens to the 145ers after this, and for all intents and purposes, the winner of this should get a title fight. But you got that one guy, Frankie Edgar, who, as you know, I don't know if he's going to fight Stevens next. It's a big question mark. I don't know what goes down with the featherweight division. Currently, your top 5, you have Aldo, you have Conor, the interim champ, then Frankie, then Mendez, who just lost, then Ricardo Lamas, then Holloway, then Swanson, then Oliveira, then Jeremy Stevens at 8. What do you do with the 145-pound division in the UFC?
Well, that is one of the most frustrating questions because Frankie Edgar, he should have had a title shot by now. I don't know how he hasn't had one. I mean, the only thing you can think of is that the UFC just doesn't want him to be the 145-pound champion. They want, I don't know, I suppose they just want Conor McGregor. That's who they are hoping. That's who they want to be their cash cow. That's the guy who they feel is the most marketable. I feel Frankie Edgar certainly has the tools, be it against Jose Aldo, be it against Conor McGregor, be it against Chad Mendez. I think he could certainly beat any of those guys on any given night. Frankie Edgar, in my opinion, is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters that we've ever seen. And it frustrates me that he has not fought for the title yet, and especially the reality of this situation is this. Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo are going to fight to unify the interim championship with the undisputed championship belts. After that fight, there's a very good chance that either way, they're going to do a rematch of that fight. No matter who wins or loses, that very well could be the next option. That puts Frankie Edgar sitting on the shelf. I mean, he could need to keep winning for the next 2 years before he gets another title fight, which is completely jacked up. I mean, that first fight, to me, I recall that first fight with him and Jose Aldo being razor thin. Edgar versus Aldo, number 1. That was a real close fight. Certainly one of the toughest fights that Jose Aldo's ever been in. This was prior to Aldo versus Mendez, too, of course. So I always felt he deserved to get back in there, of course, with his 155-pound championship credentials as well. Man, but as for the winner of Holloway versus Oliveira, I mean, they've certainly made cases for themselves too, but they just happen to be in one of the most stacked divisions that just happens to have a kind of logjam situation here. Plus, they have Jose Aldo. He is the reigning featherweight champion, the only featherweight champion there's ever been. So in situations like that, this is the Anderson Silva situation. If you get knocked out in the first round, you're getting an immediate rematch. If you get knocked out, submitted, lose a decision, whatever, you're the only champion there's ever been in the UFC. You're probably going to get an immediate rematch no matter what. That's just the way they operate these days. When Rich Franklin was champion, got knocked out by Anderson Silva, he had to fight his way back. But these are new days. So there's a very real possibility that if Conor McGregor were to win against Jose Aldo, that Jose Aldo could get that immediate rematch. So, I mean, for that reason, if no other reason, I'd say you kind of have to book Frankie Edgar versus the winner of Oliveira, Holloway. I mean, unless you want to go with, you did make a good suggestion with Jeremy Stevens against Frankie Edgar, although I believe they did say that Jeremy Stevens and Dennis Bermudez are going to rematch from their fight, just, I guess, on account of Jeremy Stevens having missed weight so badly in their first contest. So whether or not that plays out, let's see how that happens. But it's just going to be so interesting. By the time Frankie Edgar or Max Holloway or Charles Oliveira, I mean, by the time these guys even get to fight for the belt, they will have beaten so many other guys. There won't be anybody new for them once the time comes for them to get to be champion. Almost like what happened to Renan Barão. I want to say his first title defense or something was a rematch against Uriah Faber. Or no, that was actually the fight for the belt, if I recall correctly. That was just how thoroughly he had cleaned it out before he had even gotten to the belt. So I feel that's kind of what you're looking at right now. If I were running this thing, Frankie Edgar's getting the next title shot no matter what. And then it would be the winner of Oliveira Holloway after that, barring, any kind of robbery with the judges or some sort of unforeseen like that. That's how I would do it. But knowing how the UFC operates, I'm thinking it's going to be a long time before anybody other than Aldo McGregor even touches a title or sees a title in their fights.
And as of 4 days ago, Jeremy Stevens pushing for a fight against Frankie Edgar, tweeting at a fan, hopefully the UFC gets me on that December 12th card versus Frankie. Jeremy Stevens against Frankie Edgar. Do you think our boy, Little Heathen, a guy who both of us are big fans of, do you think Jeremy Stevens in a theoretical fight against Frankie Edgar has a chance against the Answer?
Man, that's a great fight. I'd love to see it. It's super funny that would be happening at 145 now, considering how they were both at 155 for so long. But even at 155, in spite of the size difference that Stevens holds over Edgar was the 155-pound champ, even being the smaller guy. And so I think Edgar's still going to have every advantage he ever did over Stevens. And as good as Stevens is, as much as I like him, as much as I like what he's done lately with his game, Edgar, he's just one of the pound-for-pound greats, in my opinion. I think he's just whole nother level style. He has been known to get caught.
Top 20 greatest of all time.
Yeah, oh yeah, easily. And he has been known to get rocked in his fights before. It's happened. But he's always come back from adversity. There's always that chance. And Jeremy Stevens, he's got a hell of a chance. And, he's got a good game overall. He's got the good wrestling, good striking. He's got the superpower. He's incorporated the kicks and knees lately. Really rounding out the game. But it's so hard to pick anybody against Edgar, really, at least for me. So I
Tiger
feel
knee, son.
Oh, that Tiger knee, though. I mean, hey, Jeremy Stevens. I was hollering Stevens over Bermudez all day.
You were.
I'm big on my boy Stevens. Got mad love for Lil Heathen. Definitely one of my favorite 145-pound fighters. Whatever weight class he's in, one of my favorite fighters. He's just fantastic. But yeah, I would have to go with Edgar in that one.
And I would too, and it's no It's no diss to Jeremy Stevens, but Frankie Edgar is a motherfucker. I think that just about does it. Thank you so much for listening to the 134th MMA podcast. We appreciate this shit out of each and every one of you who turned your ears to it. As always, you can visit us on Twitter at the MMA Podcast. Visit themmapodcast.com. Visit our boy P Money at Sweet Pappy Jones. As always, the FRB show, like I said, you got a great episode coming up Monday with Chael Sonnen, Front Row Brian, and John Pierre Marini. Listen to that there on Twitter at Filthy FRB show for the podcast. Sonnen CH, John is himself, Front Row Brian, and it is a fun ass show you want to listen to. Future guests, man, we have a lot lined up. I don't want to give too much up, but I think we're going to have Nate Corey on soon. I think we're going to have Joe Schilling on soon. I think we might have Pat Healy and some fighters from Titan on soon. I've been talking to the president of Titan FC about having some fighters on the air. P Money, I know you're on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. What else do you have to tell the people?
Well, we love the people, Jake. It's always a pleasure doing this thing with
beautiful
you.
People.
And the beautiful people, giving the people what they want, what they love hearing, and that's us breaking down the MMA truth and goodness. Always good. Check out your boy at Sweet Pappy Jones on the Twitter, on the Instagram. Marijuana is the truth. It's the life. It's the way it heals. Look into that. Big shouts out to all. Look into that. Shouts out to all the fam. Ramses, Rabbi, J Jeans, all the Playground
DJ
fam.
Jeans.
DJ Jeans. All these motherfucking cocksuckers, you beautiful. Always a pleasure doing it with you, Jake. Let's get ready for these fights tomorrow, sucker.
Westland Eagle, AH, Gavin Frost, 361, Ross Finkelstein, Yao _ the truth, our boy Kevin Black at Technics 88, the MMA enthusiast, Hiro Shinwoo. Who the fuck else? We got Angry Dana White. We got, of course, Davey Boy. Check out Davey Boy. Davey Boy, the G, Scotty B. Check out all of our buddies. We love the shit out of all of you. I wish we could shout all of you out. Our boy Relapse at R3. Wait, where the fuck is he? R3 LAPZE. Check out Relapse. JF757. Our boy Juno. What the fuck is going on? I can shout our friends out forever. Yo, Luca Fury, for real. Check out Luca Fury's show, the MMA Oddscast. That is some legit ass shit. I listen to every single one. And goddamn, I have a million other people I could shout out, and I love the shit out of all of you. I can't shout you all out, but we will be back this coming week to break down MMA, talk shit. If you're listening, I love you, and next week we'll see ya. We gone.
Shout out to Jake. Tune into the MMA Podcast every Tuesday night.
Got the wild style, always been a foul child. Realize, sucker, I be the coming like Noah.
The MMA Podcast, Jake is the host. And since Ramsey's been in a wheelchair, the Aunt Jimmy Show has been on the road. I wanna say John Jones is a host, so I think that I'll pick up the phone and dial 213-457-3380. We got hot takes on the stove. You get blood on your clothes if you're sitting in the front row. I throw on my gi and then I lace the hoops. I'll have Yao lying down cause he ain't the truth. And if Alan wasn't a cop, I'd mention you. And shout out to Ross Finkelstein the Jew. Cause according to you, you're an MMA guru. Approved Bisbing lost his hands, Count Dooku. If you're a fancy boy, you get a 2-minute slot. Mystery wants a title shot. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me Diaz, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. But you know that I'll never tap. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me DS, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap, and you know that I won't tap. Mystery, the MMA Podcast. Most of us just live and breathe this fighting shit. Shout out to Jake. Shout out to Jake.
Powerful. Powerful.